How we going? So what I've got behind me is a catch drill setup. I'll show you exactly how to do that. Then we're going to go through what is the catch, so a detailed description of what exactly is the catch, because I've seen a lot of stuff online and it's actually really hard to describe, and it happens for a very short period of time. So where does the catch start and finish? At what part of the paddle, so what part of the actual paddle affects the catch the most? The physics of the catch, so what are our hips and leg drive doing at the moment of the catch, and therefore how do we best train to improve our catch, and what sort of strength and conditioning and on-water drills can we do. So here we go. So you'll need a erg or somewhere to sit. You'll need a box or something you can press a paddle against, or a stick. You'll need a paddle or a stick, and you'll need something heavy to hold that box in place. So here's the drill. I'm on the erg. I'm going to place my paddle on the other end of the box, and I'm going to try and push the erg past that box. In a moment I'll take my top off just to show the muscle activation as well, as it's clearly visible. So here you go, you can see that force being transferred through that arm into my lats and into my leg. You can also see where the catch, how much the catch fills up the blade on the paddle. So it's about halfway, or that top third of the paddle. So here's the front on view. Keep my top on this time and just really take note of how deep that paddle is in the water. So only really that top third of the blade is going to be that main catch point. So here I am setting up for the catch. So what you can see is I've got an older paddle for this drill, just in case I do actually break it, because I'm going to put a bit of force into this drill. You could also use a stick, it doesn't have to be a paddle. I just like having a blade on the end to illustrate the catch. So if you can see where my paddle is on the box, you can see that about half of the paddle is buried. So we're going to go from a setup position, which is position number one. Next one is the catch. Then we drive, then we exit. So the catch is phase number two of the paddling stroke. So when I teach people on the erg, I normally talk about the blade entering the water as the catch. And you hear the term spearing the fish, so the spearing the fish is that motion. It probably isn't the best description of what we're trying to do. We're trying to place the blade in the water, but we don't really want to lean forward to do that. So it's actually a slight drop in the shoulders. So it's going to be a small lateral spinal flexion, the technical term. So we're going to drop our shoulder down and raise the opposite shoulder up, and that's going to get our blade into the water. And now there's a brief second where the tip of the blade is going to enter the water, and it's going to roughly cover this amount of blade surface. So once that's in the water, that's when we have purchase, or the blade has connected enough with the water. There's a moment in time when that blade connects with the water, we're trying to push our boat forward past that position of the blade, so the blade's not actually going to move. So in this position, what I can do with my body is I can still extend my hip, but I haven't actually applied any force to the water. And if I had something that I could move, I could also move my arm. So those would be two incorrect ways, or two ways to have an ineffective catch. So if I was to remove my top arm, the force is starting from the water where the blade is connected, and then it's coming through my arm, into my shoulder, down my core, and through my leg into the footrest. So we're trying to push that footrest away from me. Okay. If I add my top arm, it gives me a more stable platform to hold that lever. And you can see my previous video of paddle length, and that's where this applies. So this creates the lever for the leverage on the water. So now there's a brief moment in time when I'm actually just trying to push boat forward, but the pedal stays where it is, hence the drill. So it's actually an isometric moment in time where you create a thing called impulse, which is a rate of force production. How quickly can you apply force to the water? So this will help your boat jump out of the water and propel it forward. If you can nail this part of your stroke, you will be a faster paddler. Once I've gone through that catch, so it starts to move, the boat starts to move forward, and therefore the paddle is going to come back towards me. That's when my legs will start driving, and I'll initiate the rest of the drive phase into the exit. So that initial catch is actually a moment in time, which is isometric. So adding a comment here is, as we move through the drive phase after the catch, the paddle will progressively get deeper and then exit at the end, at the exit phase. So what you'll feel when you do this drill is you'll feel your quads. So your quads are contracting to try and push the boat forward. If you reach down and feel your calf, you actually see that your calf is activated as well. So the people that say your calves don't do much in paddling, well, they actually help with your catch a little bit. If you come to your core and do that, I have to take my hand off the paddle to show you this, but if you did that, enticing in your core, you'll find that your internal and external obliques are both contracting quite hard, because you're trying to pull your ribs closer to your body, and you're also keeping your hip high. So your external obliques are doing that, and your internal obliques are doing that. So you've actually engaged your whole side of your body on the same side as the paddle. It's not until we get into the drive phase that we begin to lengthen that side of the body up. Okay? So you'll see a lot of people move away from the blade. That's not what I'm talking about. So we're staying straight, but we're maximally contracting our core on one side of the body. Then we lengthen while the other side coils and contracts together. Okay? So before we get to the catch, we're actually bringing your hip and your ribs closer together. So you're coiled. Then it's initially an isometric contraction to get that impulse of the paddle grabbing the water. Then we release that side, because all the weight will be on that side of the boat. We release that side, transfer the weight to the other side of the boat to set up for the next stroke. So this part of the blade here is the catch section, so that's why it's bigger. So it allows us to catch the water when we put it in the water. So we'll go in the water like that, and that hits the water first. So that's our catch, and typically this part helps us with the exit. See how it's got a slight twist in it, and some blades will have more or less twists. So that just helps us when we get through the drive and into the exit. That just helps that blade track outwards so we can take the next stroke. But this part here is the important bit when it comes to catch. And when you're looking for a blade with a good catch, it'll have a bigger end than a blade with a more of a parallel shape. It's more even across the stroke. But what that means is, if you miss the catch, you can still propel your boat forward with the rest of the paddle. Whereas if a paddle has more of a focus on the catch, you can't miss it. Otherwise, you'd really start to lose that effectiveness of your paddle. So here's a way to do the same drill on a seat and somewhere that is solid that you can grab onto and push away. And if we try and do that wrong, so let's try and lengthen this side of the body too early. Doesn't really work. And then let's stay tight. So this is one way to train impulse, and you'll see it done in high performance situations where you'll get a force plate on the ground I don't have one of those. And an immovable bar where we'll move into a mid-thigh pull. So we're going to try and move this bar on this end of the rack, so underneath. I'm going to try and pull it up using hip extension, my legs and my lats. So that's actually a measurement that Sprint Kayakers will use as well for strength testing. So this version here is, I believe it's a Strong Paddler invention. I'd love to know if anyone else is doing it out there, but certainly came up with it myself. So same theory, we're still doing a isometric exercise, but I've made it more specific to paddling. So what I've got is a bar on a rack. The top of it is on the outside of the bar, and the bottom of it is on the inside of the bar. I need to move that. So what that means is I can pull that end and I can push that end. Okay. So if you start off square and then you move around to your push end, so you've got a pull side like you would in a kayak, your legs forward on the pull side and your legs back on the push side. Lunge down, so you've got a roughly a, let's say 80-degree bend in the knee, so not quite 90. Get into position, feel that, just put a little bit of tension on the pull side and put a little bit of tension on the push just to get the feeling for it, and then count yourself down, 3, 2, 1, and then just try and push and pull that bar at the same time, and you feel that force come through this side of the body and also through that top arm. So this is a great activation exercise, especially if you're struggling with your catch. Also a good exercise to do before you get on the water, especially if you're going to do a sprint session or trying to do some more focus on getting your boat running and up out of the water with good effective catch. It's also good to throw at the end of your strength sessions, as it can help just develop that mind-muscle connection back to the kayak stroke. Once you've done this exercise, then you can move on to sling exercises, and I'll post a video up here around what those look like. But the sling exercise will help develop strength through the rest of that stroke as you move through the drive phase. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and give the video a like if you found it valuable. Check out my website, strongpaddler.com. I've got a whole technique course that you can follow. It's all online and it's accountable, so as you work through it, you can contact me and ask me questions, and I check in on you to see how your paddling is going. At the end of it, you get a sweet certificate to show that you have completed the course. So check that out. Link will be in the description below.